The body text or body copy is the text forming the main content of the products you're designing. It contrasts with other text existing in your products like headings, subheadings, footnotes, labels, and more. The main aim of body text is to make it easy for people to read the text and consume the content. Body text shouldn't try to do much more than just being legible. In most situations, you will start typesetting with body text. Only if your product isn't text heavy, the use of text is minimal, or there is a specific goal you love to ensure gets achieved, will you go a different route. Legibility describes how easily can the typeface's glyphs be identified as characters and words. Distinct shapes, font size, X height, weight, serifs or lack thereof, counter sizes, color, and more affect legibility. Which one of these typefaces looks more legible? Take a moment and think about why. What are some traits you can identify and vocalize? Pause this video if you'd love to test your legibility analyzing skills before I share the answer. If you said A, you would be correct. The winner might not be immediately clear, but if you take the time to analyze them, you will notice the details that make all the difference. The X height is higher since the lowercase letters are closer to the height of the uppercase ones. Counters are more open, the weight feels just right, and you can more easily differentiate between an uppercase I and a lowercase l. Letter spacing is better, words are more easily distinguishable one from the other, and characters are less squarish, making them more organic in comparison, even though the typeface falls under the static category. That doesn't mean that the bottom option can't work as the body text style, but when it comes to legibility only, there is a subtle difference that makes a better option. Purposefully, these two typefaces were picked as they're somewhat similar in style, so the winner might for some not be as obvious at first glance, and it's okay if it wasn't for you. If it was, then even better, it means that everything we've learned so far is sticking. Let's now talk about some of the good design practices for body text. The font size should be at least 16 and everything up to 24 seems to work well. There is not a single answer as each typeface is unique and the use case is different. Generally, you will stay on the lower end for smaller screens and web applications, while large screen sizes and more editorial and blog-oriented products require larger font sizes. Line height shouldn't be left to auto settings. I see a lot of beginners making this mistake. Most often, the ideal line height for body text is somewhere between 130 and 170%. The best value to try out first is 150% or 1.5. Again, there is no right way to do it that will work for all use cases and typefaces. It takes a bit of adjusting, but this range should give you a great head start. The more characters there are per line, the higher should the line height be. A line needs to be visually grouped with the next one while still allowing for quick skimming and easy reading. A user should never struggle with knowing what line they're in and if the lines are connected to each other or not. You can see how in this example, all typefaces have the same font size. They do feel larger or smaller based on their type attributes. That's one of the reasons why the line height differs for each one. The width of all of the text boxes was the same, but this naturally smaller typeface like Baskerville is able to squeeze in more text per line, resulting in the smallest line height. I would never go with a line height of 200 for body text, since it means that you can easily squeeze in another line of text in between the lines. Line length should ideally be somewhere between 45 and 75 characters. It's the optimal length of a line of text for readability. Anything less breaks the flow of reading too often, while longer lines become too hard to read. Keep in mind that on smaller screen sizes, line length will more often than not be smaller than 45 characters, and that's okay. It's better to have a legible font size than trying to squeeze in 45 to 75 characters per line. Text box width will be influenced by a desired number of characters per line and your grid, if you use one. If you change the font size, you will have to adjust the line height and the number of characters per line will change too. All of these are related, so take special care of adjusting each one as soon as you change one. Character spacing isn't something you will necessarily change for body text. You might make some minimal adjustments, but if you're just starting out, I'd honestly skip this completely, as it's easy to ruin the legibility of the typeface. You will generally want to increase the character spacing if you're using all caps or if you're working with a really tight typeface and small font sizes. For larger font sizes, you might look into decreasing the character spacing. When you're picking body fonts, as we already established, legibility is the most important factor. Typefaces with text in their name are often a great pick, as they were made specifically for body text use. I personally prefer typefaces that support italics and generally have more weights to play with. Depending on the project, I might require old-style numerals or tabular numerals. Ligatures are also something I might look into. The more flexibility a typeface has, the better. Character support is a massive factor too. If you're working on a project for a specific area, it's important to include all characters that the audience in that area expects and uses. Also, if you're working on a product used worldwide, a wide character support is a great benefit. It makes people who use or have special characters in their name and addresses feel included, and it removes potential frustrations. One element of typesetting I see ignored is paragraph spacing. The worst thing you could do is just hit enter to create it, since that means there is enough room in between paragraphs to fit in another line of text. If you don't put enough care into setting the correct paragraph spacing, you might end up with something that looks like a mistake, or with something that looks like two paragraphs aren't related at all. Paragraph spacing needs to be clearly visible without being so big you can squeeze in another line. My go-to is usually a value that's half of the line height. Since I often try to make my line heights divisible by the same number, as I often work with 8-point or 4-point soft grids, having a value that's half of the line height often results in being divisible by the same number too. For example, if I had a font size of 16, a good line height for most typefaces would be 24. Paragraph spacing would then be 12, half of 24. It's big enough to be noticeable, but not big enough so that one more line of text fits in between paragraphs, and it's divisible by 4. Using the same base number for most of your sizes helps you lower the amount of choices you need to make, and creates almost invisible harmony and rhythm in your designs. It doesn't matter if that number is 4 or 6 or 8 or 10, as long as it helps you create visually harmonious designs. However, most of product design teams are using 4 and 8-point grids, and there's a lot of good reasons why. Feel free to look into the topic if it sounds like it can help you become a more efficient designer. For me, the biggest advantage is minimizing the amount of choices. For example, I don't have to decide between 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24 for the line height. I just have to see if 20 or 24 works better. At times something like 23 would maybe be ideal, but the difference is almost always invisible, and the amount of cognitive effort I saved is a worthwhile trade-off. And it makes the communication with developers easier, since they know that all sizes need to be divisible by that number. So even if they see 23 somewhere, they will see it as a human mistake and set it to 24. I don't think font sizes need to be divisible by that number though, just line heights and ideally paragraph spacing. Font sizes don't affect the height of the textual elements, line heights do. That's why. Another alternative to paragraph spacings are indents. I don't see it often in UI design, but I want to note it as a solid alternative you might be better off with for some types of projects. I hope you're feeling a lot more confident in styling your body text now. There are a lot of elements that impact the user's experience with body text, but these are awesome defaults you can use until you master the craft of styling the body text. And all of them I share with you in this video.